Hello, this is Idodmg and welcome back to the channel. In this Diablo 4 quarterly update video, I want to talk about this newest installment into their blog series for their new upcoming game, Diablo 4. I'm sure you've all heard of it by now. Anyway, I haven't been making a lot of videos about these updates just because I've been kind of sitting quietly on the sidelines, kind of watching. And I was reading through this one today, and it just really brought some interesting things to the table that I was thinking about. And I just wanted to share my thoughts overall on the update. So I hope you enjoy the video. They open up this blog series by just talking about how important itemization is to their game. They recently talked about some sort of itemizations in one of the earlier blogs with the angelic and demonic powers, if you can remember that. It was a little bit of a obscure way of handling itemization. While I thought it was unique and interesting, it just felt a little bit odd. It's really interesting what they talked about in this update. But the first thing that they really kind of talked about was their skill tree. We got a glance at that, and as you know, respeccing in games and redoing your build is always a hot topic of discussion. Do you just let it be open and you can change builds on the fly? Do you make it so there's no respeccing at all and you're just committed to your build? And how do you find that sweet spot in the middle? I think that they're onto something here, and it's kind of a trend that we've been seeing with other ARPGs that have been cropping up. What they're planning on doing is early on while you're leveling up, you're going to be able to swap your skills and kind of redo and try different skills and abilities and builds early on. It'll still be an investment, but it'll be a lot easier to try new things while you're still an early and new character. But as you progress into endgame and later on into your progression, it will become a serious investment to fully redo your build from the ground up. I think their idea is right, and I agree with it here. I think that there should be a feeling of commitment and identity and uniqueness to your build. And once you're at max level or you're progressing in the end game and you've dumped over 50, maybe 60 hours into your character or even more, it should be hard to fully redo everything from the ground up, I think. In ARPGs, replayability is a huge factor. And I think that remaking a new character and trying a different build with that character is a great idea that more ARPGs should grasp instead of just handing the player respecs and allowing them to swap everything on the fly. Again, that's my own personal opinion, and I know there are people out there that probably won't agree with that, but commitment is a real thing for me, and being able to just swap everything on the fly just feels weird and makes the game feel a little bit cheap. Again, my opinion. And I think that Diablo 4 making it more of an investment the higher level and the more into endgame you get is definitely a smart design choice. So at the beginning of the video, I did mention their stat changes and kind of their itemization changes before we had the angelic and demonic powers on gear. Gear was the defining factor of your character and your hero. Your stats were literally like 80% of your character's strength. The community seemed to not really like that, and they wanted to see a little bit more of class identity, character identity, and the strength purely coming mainly from your character. You still have items to supplement that, obviously, but what they've done is they've gotten rid of the angelic and demonic powers on gear, and instead you now have 4 main primary stats. You have strength, intelligence, willpower, and dexterity, as you would expect in any RPG. Each of these stats has a defensive component that is the same regardless of class. Strength gives you defense, intelligence is going to give you all resistance, willpower is going to increase your healing received, and dexterity is going to be your dodge chance. Where it gets interesting is when these stats are used offensively. They change what they do based on your class. And I think this is a really neat idea because it does preserve that class identity. At first, I thought it was a little bit odd, but let's go ahead and talk about it first, and then we'll talk about my thoughts on this. So they gave us 2 examples. They gave us the Barbarian, where strength is skill damage, willpower is fury regeneration, and then dexterity is crit. They switched things up then by doing a side-by-side comparison to the Sorcerer, where intelligence is now your skill damage, which makes sense. That's how it should be. And then you have willpower as your crit instead of regeneration. And instead, dexterity is how you regenerate your mana. I kind of thought when I first looked at this, I was like, why don't they just leave dexterity as crit for both? But I guess maybe it makes sense if we're talking about class identity. I just had to think about it for a little bit. Like, it just seems like they're kind of trying to make it maybe a little bit overcomplicated when they could just streamline it and just say, intelligence is for mage users, strength is for melee or material type, physical type of classes, for your skill damage. But then you have willpower is always regen and dexterity is always crit. That would just make it more streamlined in my opinion. That's how the primary stats are going to look in Diablo 4. They made it seem like the majority of your stats are going to come from leveling up in your actual character, while still finding items to supplement them like I mentioned earlier. Another interesting thing when it comes to stats is the skill tree. The more stats you have on the skill tree that they showed in the developer blog, there are nodes that you can unlock that you get the baseline ability. But if you have enough stats invested, you can unlock an actual bonus effect on these nodes as well. I think this is going to be really nice so that you kind of have something to aim for as far as how much stats to put into your character, because you're going to want to think about this offensively. While you want to get these bonuses, but you also want to not neglect your defenses as well. I think this is definitely great in how they're handling stats, allotting your points and everything with your character progression. Again, remember, this is just primary stats. There's going to be other itemizations, affixes, and things that we'll find on gear. So that's pretty much what they talked about with stats and itemization a little bit. Now let's actually talk about items. It's like the first half of the blog was about your character and your hero, and the second half was actually about the items that you'll be equipping. They start out by talking about different weapon types. You have different weapon types as you would expect: wands, stabs, hammers, maces, axes, things like that. But they have now tied an attack speed to each weapon type. So the quicker weapons are going to be nice. You can kind of get in, get out, reposition if you need to. The bigger, more bulky and slower weapons will have a bigger punch, but with more of an investment. I think this is a great change. This is going to bring more of a kind of strategic curve of positioning, and if you want to go for the quicker play style or the big, more burst type of play style, definitely a welcome change in my opinion. And another change they made to weapons is every weapon has a base stat. They showed off that you can see here shields have block chance. It looks like wands come with a base stat of crit, and axe brings bleed with them. There's other weapon types, but this is all they showed off in the dev blog. This really reminded me of the last Epoch system of having base items. And it's really honestly a nice system because you know that you're looking for, let's say you're doing a bleed build. You know you're looking for axes for that. It's just nice to know that there's this base item. You're for sure going to have that base stat tied to it, and then the secondary effects are randomized. Great way to handle itemization. It's nothing brand new to the genre, but it's definitely been working for last Epoch, and I'm glad that Diablo 4 is grasping onto the idea. Another thing that really reminded me of last Epoch in this dev blog was they're talking about uniques. Uniques in Diablo 4 they'll have the same affixes, and what they mean by that is two of the same named unique item. They're going to have the same stats on them. So if you see the item over on the left, the Kill to the Plaguebringer, their unique pants, they're always going to have defense, life, elite damage reduction, potion cooldown, and a rank to hunt the weak. Those are always going to be there. I'm going to guess that the percentage there on the legendary effect, or the unique effect, I guess, in this scenario is probably randomized. But they're all the stats that roll on that specific item will always be the same. The values could be different, but the actual what it does is going to be the same. And that's really what Last Epoch does with their uniques as well. Is you know that if you're looking for a specific unique item, you know it's going to do a very specific niche thing for your build. So uniques are definitely an interesting thing because you can build around them. They have a flavor tied to them, and you know for sure what you're getting and what you're looking for. Now, I know we skipped an item quality here. We went straight from just talking about base weapons to straight to uniques. We didn't talk about the rarities in between. And I think the way that they're handling this is a smart idea, because historically it's been that, well, legendaries are just king. You want all legendaries equipped all the time. And I think that's still going to remain true. One thing they're changing is the legendary effect on these orange items is the legendary power is randomized. So just because you get a Stone of Jordan doesn't mean that it's going to have that specific legendary power tied to it. It's a purely randomized legendary effect. This to me is huge. Diablo 3, I had every legendary in the game memorized. I knew exactly what the legendary effect was and what I was looking for. Them being randomized is a huge factor to me. But what are they doing about the blue and yellow rarity of items? You have magic and rare items. What are they going to do to make people want those items? And they talk about in the blog how it's really nice when you graduate from those blue items and you are gearing for the yellow items. And just that feel of progression. It is a good feeling, and that's just a part of RPGs, is improving your character. But they want to try to make the items stay somewhat relevant throughout the progression process. So what they're going to do to make this happen is blue magic items are going to have more powerful affixes, albeit less affixes on them than rares. The affixes are just going to be stronger numerically than you would find on a yellow item. And then your yellow rare items is going to have, I think they said 5 affix rolls on them, whereas your legendary is only going to have 4 affix rolls, but it also have a legendary power tied to it. So if you're really looking for specific affixes, that rare could beat a legendary. If the legendary dropped and the legendary power on it was maybe something not really for your build, you could get rid of that and get that 5th affix by using a rare item. Anyway, I think it's definitely interesting to see how they're trying to make items can compete with higher rarities. I think at the end of the day, we're still going to have, full legendary sets definitely are going to just be better than the rare and magic items. That's just kind of the nature of the genre. But it's interesting to see how they're trying to keep things relevant by giving the yellow items an additional affix, trading out for legendary power. The biggest takeaway here is those legendary affixes being randomized on legendary drops. I think that's going to bring a lot to the table and just make that hunt for items that much more exciting. At the end of the day, yes, this blog was mainly focused on items and stats, which was just real. I gave it a good read, and I just kept thinking of things that I wanted to talk about, and that's what made this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed this chat about Diablo 4. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Have you guys read through it? Do you agree with me? I know there's going to be people that just don't agree with, the respecking and some of the other things I talked about, and that's totally fine. That's what makes the ARPG genre great, is that there are so many different perspectives. I'm looking forward to their BlizzCon online this year to see what else they talk about in regards to Diablo 4, and I hope you guys are too. If you enjoy this video and all the content on the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, or ring that bell to get notified when I post new gaming videos on the channel. Feel free to share with a friend. Your guys' support means the world to me. I thank you so much for watching this video. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.